When they hunted every species they found, then Earth hunted them back. Jake Morrison stared at the empty city through his helmet visor and felt his blood turn cold. The buildings stretched endlessly before him, perfect and untouched, but something was terribly wrong. No lights flickered in the windows. No movement stirred in the streets. No sound echoed through his radio except the steady breathing of his team. The Starship Endeavour had traveled 14 light-years to reach this place. Earth's first deep space mission to contact alien civilizations had taken 3 years of journey time, and Jake had dreamed of this moment since he was a child. First contact with an advanced alien species, the beginning of humanity's entrance into a galactic community, but there was no one here to contact. Sophie Williams knelt beside what looked like a fountain in the city center. Her scanner beeped softly as she took readings. "Commander, this place was inhabited recently. Maybe 50 years ago, maybe less. But look at this." She pointed her device at the crystalline structures around them. "The buildings aren't just empty. They're fused. Like something hit them with incredible heat all at once." Jake walked closer to examine the strange formations. What he had thought were decorative crystal growths were actually melted stone and metal, flash-cooled into impossible shapes. Heat signatures? None. Whatever did this is long gone. Sophie stood and brushed dust from her knees. "But Jake, the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever weapon caused this was beyond anything we understand." Ryan Torres emerged from a nearby building, his face pale behind his visor. "Commander, you need to see what's inside these structures." There are shadows burned into the walls, perfect outlines of beings that were standing there when this happened. They didn't have time to run. The team spent 6 hours documenting the ghost city before returning to the Endeavour. Jake sat in his captain's chair and stared at the data streaming across his screens. This was supposed to be Kepler 442b, home to the Centauri Republic according to the radio signals Earth had detected decades ago. The signals had stopped 12 years ago, but everyone assumed it was just a change in their communication methods. No one had imagined this. "Set course for Proxima Centauri b," Jake ordered. "Maybe we'll find answers there." The journey took 2 weeks. When they arrived at the second planet, Lisa Carter was the first to spot the underground installations from orbit. "Massive tunnel systems," she reported from the science station. "This civilization went underground. Maybe they saw whatever destroyed the Centauri Republic coming. But the underground cities told an even worse story. Ryan led the exploration team through tunnels that stretched for miles beneath the planet's surface. Emergency lighting still functioned in some sections, casting eerie shadows on walls covered with what looked like claw marks. Deep gouges scored the metal as if something incredibly strong had tried to tear its way through. "They built these bunkers to hide," Ryan said, his voice echoing in the empty corridors. "Look at the thickness of these walls. This was meant to withstand planetary bombardment." They found the first bodies in a massive chamber near the tunnel's center. Thousands of alien beings, their bodies preserved in the dry underground air. They had died huddled together, families protecting their young. The expressions on their faces spoke of terror beyond description. Sophie found the data archives 3 levels deeper. Banks of alien computers still hummed with power, their memory cores intact. "Lisa, I need you down here. This is beyond my expertise." Lisa Carter had spent her entire career studying alien languages and technology. She had learned 17 Earth languages and could decode basic patterns in almost any communication system. But when she accessed the Proxima archives, what she found made her hands shake. "They called them the Void Hunters," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "According to these records, they appeared in this system 47 years ago. Advanced ships, technology beyond anything these people had seen. But they didn't come to trade or communicate." Jake leaned over her shoulder as alien text scrolled across the screen. "What did they want?" "To hunt." Lisa's translation software worked overtime as she processed the files. "The Void Hunters study each species they encounter. They learn everything about their technology, their culture, their military capabilities. Then they classify them as prey and begin what they call the Great Hunt." The records painted a picture of systematic terror. The Void Hunters would arrive at a world and announce their intentions. They gave each species time to prepare, treating the coming extermination as a sporting event. They studied how each civilization responded to the threat, documenting different survival strategies and defensive technologies. "It's like they're collecting data," Sophie said as she reviewed the files. Each species they destroy teaches them more about how intelligent life responds to extinction-level threats. Ryan found the final entries in the archive. Listen to this. Day 847 of the Great Hunt. The Void Hunters have broken through the northern tunnels. We can hear them above us playing with our people before they kill them. They don't just want us dead, they want us afraid. This is our final transmission. To any species that receives this message, do not try to fight them. Do not try to hide. They have done this 845 times before. They will do it again. Run as far as you can. The team sat in silence for several minutes. Jake felt the weight of command pressing down on him like a physical force. Earth had been broadcasting radio signals into space for over a century. If these Void Hunters were still out there, if they were still hunting, then humanity's transmissions would have reached them years ago. How many species? Jake asked quietly. Lisa checked the records again. According to this, the Proxima civilization was hunt number 846. The Centauri Republic was 847. There are references to hundreds of previous hunts, going back thousands of years. And they're still out there? The last entry suggests they moved on to find new prey. Jake, these archives contain star charts, maps of where the Void Hunters have been, where they might go next. And some of these coordinates... She paused, running calculations. Some of these coordinates point toward Earth's region of space. Sophie was monitoring long-range sensors when the alarms began sounding. Commander, I'm detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts heading directly toward us. Jake rushed to the bridge and stared at the sensor readings. 12 large vessels approached from deep space, their design unlike anything in Earth's databases. Biomechanical curves twisted around what looked like living metal, and energy patterns pulsed through their hulls like blood through veins. Are those the Void Hunters? Unknown vessels, this is Commander Jake Morrison of the Earthship Endeavor. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came in perfect English, spoken in a voice that seemed to carry the sound of death itself. Greetings, Prey Species 848. You have been observed. You have been studied. You have been classified. Prepare your homeworld for the Great Hunt. The Void Hunters are coming. The transmission ended, and the alien ships vanished into hyperspace as quickly as they had appeared. Jake stared at the empty space where the ships had been and realized that humanity's greatest challenge was just beginning. Earth needed to be warned, but it would take years for any message to reach home. The Void Hunters already knew where to find them, and they were planning something that had destroyed 847 civilizations before. The hunt for humanity was about to begin. Because they hunted every species they found, then Earth hunted them. Back 3 years had passed since Jake Morrison's desperate message reached Earth, and Admiral Kate Hudson stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiance, watching humanity's last hope take shape in space. Every nation on Earth had contributed ships to the hastily assembled defense fleet. Old military vessels flew alongside converted cargo haulers and civilian craft fitted with whatever weapons could be mounted on their hulls. It was not enough, and everyone knew it. The long-range sensors had been tracking them for weeks, massive signatures moving through space at speeds that defied human understanding, ships that seemed to pulse with their own life, growing larger on the screens with each passing day. The Void Hunters were coming, just as they had promised. Kate had read Jake Morrison's reports 100 times. She knew what happened to the 847 civilizations that came before. She understood that Earth was facing an enemy that had perfected the art of extinction over thousands of years. But she also knew that humanity had one advantage the other species might not have had. Time to prepare. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the approaching fleet, reported Lieutenant Ben Parker from the communications station. It's on all frequencies, every language on Earth. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was unlike anything Kate had ever heard. It carried the weight of ancient death and spoke with the casual tone of a predator discussing its next meal. People of Earth, I am High Predator Zethkalar of the Void Hunter clans. You have been designated as Prey Species 848, and your world has been selected as our next great hunt preserve. Kate felt her blood turn to ice, but she forced herself to remain calm. Her crew needed to see strength, not fear. We have observed your species for many cycles, the alien voice continued. Your wars intrigue us. Your adaptability impresses us. Your capacity for violence delights us. We hereby classify humanity as Apex Challenge Level, the highest designation we have awarded in 3 centuries. Ben Parker looked up from his station with confusion written across his face. Admiral, they're broadcasting this to the entire planet. Every television, every radio, every connected device on Earth is receiving this message. The Void Hunter's voice carried on, with what sounded almost like pleasure. The rules of the Great Hunt are simple. You have 1 Earth year to prepare your defenses, organize your resistance, and say farewell to your civilization. We will study your responses during this time, learning how you fight, how you hide, how you die. Then the true hunt begins. Kate activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships maintain positions, do not engage unless directly fired upon. She knew it was useless to respond to the alien message, but she had to try. Unknown vessels. This is Admiral Kate Hudson of the Earth Defense Fleet. Earth is a peaceful world. We pose no threat to you. Surely we can find a diplomatic solution. The response came immediately, filled with what could only be described as laughter. Admiral Hudson, we have no interest in diplomacy. We are hunters, and you are prey. Your protests are noted and will be included in our study. We find it amusing when prey species attempt negotiation. On the main screen, the Void Hunter fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Kate had seen the technical specifications in Morrison's reports, but witnessing the ships in person was something entirely different. They looked alive, with surfaces that rippled like skin and weapons that extended like claws. 12 massive vessels surrounded by hundreds of smaller craft, all pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to shift and change. Admiral, they're launching smaller ships toward Earth, reported Elena Rodriguez from the sensor station. Multiple contacts heading for major population centers. All planetary defense systems prepare to engage, Kate ordered. But before she could give the firing command, the alien voice returned. Do not mistake these vessels for an invasion force, Admiral Hudson. These are merely scouts, sent to begin our preliminary study. The Great Hunt does not begin for 1 year. Until then, we will simply observe and occasionally test your responses. Think of it as practice. The first Void Hunter scout ship descended toward New York City like a falling star. Colonel Ben Parker, Kate's nephew who commanded the city's air defense, scrambled every fighter jet and missile battery they had. The engagement lasted exactly 17 minutes. Ben watched in horror as his most advanced weapons barely scratched the alien craft's hull. The Void Hunter ship moved with impossible grace, dodging missile strikes and return fire with movements that seemed to predict where the attacks would come from. When it finally responded, a single beam of purple energy swept across the sky, disabling every human aircraft without destroying them. They're not trying to kill us, Ben reported to his aunt over the communication link. They could have destroyed the entire squadron, but they just knocked out our engines. The pilots are all alive, floating down on emergency chutes. Similar scenes played out across the globe. Void Hunter scouts tested military installations in Russia, China, Europe, and Australia. Each engagement followed the same pattern. The aliens would approach slowly, allowing human forces to deploy their best weapons and tactics. Then they would demonstrate their overwhelming superiority without actually killing anyone. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked frantically in the International Defense Laboratory, analyzing every scrap of data from the encounters. What she found made the situation even more terrifying. They're learning, she told Kate during their daily briefing. Every weapon we use, every tactic we try, they're recording and analyzing. They know exactly what our capabilities are. How long have they been watching us? Based on their knowledge of our languages and technology, I'd estimate decades, maybe longer. They mentioned our wars specifically. They've probably been studying human conflict since World War II, learning how we fight, how we react under pressure. Kate studied the tactical reports spread across her desk. The Void Hunters had visited 37 major cities and military installations. In every case, they had overwhelmed human defenses with ease while keeping casualties to 0. They're playing with us. It's worse than that, Elena said quietly. According to the data we've recovered from Morrison's mission, this is how they always begin. They give the prey species time to prepare because watching the preparation is part of the entertainment. They want to see what we'll do when we know death is coming. As weeks turned to months, the psychological pressure began to take its toll. Some people fled to remote locations hoping to hide from the coming hunt. Others threw themselves into frantic preparation, building weapons and shelters with desperate energy. A few simply gave up, unable to cope with the certainty of extinction. But something else was happening too. Something the Void Hunters might not have expected. Humanity was not breaking apart under the pressure. Instead, old enemies were becoming allies. Nations that had been rivals for centuries began sharing technology and resources. Scientists from every corner of the Earth collaborated on defense projects. Military leaders who had never spoken to each other exchanged strategies and tactics. "They think they're giving us time to prepare," Kate told her senior staff during a planning meeting. "But what they're really doing is giving us time to unite. For the first time in human history, our entire species is working toward a single goal." Ben Parker looked up from his tactical display. "What goal is that, Admiral?" Kate smiled grimly as she watched Earth's united fleet taking shape in space. Ships from every nation now flew together under a single command structure. Weapons that had been national secrets were being shared freely. Technologies that would have taken decades to develop were being completed in months through unprecedented cooperation. "Survival," she said. "And when we survive this, we're going to make sure no other species ever has to face what we're facing." Outside the observation windows, Void Hunter ships drifted through the solar system like sharks circling their prey. They broadcast regular updates on their study progress, describing human responses with the clinical detachment of scientists observing lab rats. But High Predator Zethkalar was beginning to notice something unusual in the human data. Previous prey species had shown predictable patterns of panic, desperation, and eventual collapse. Humans were displaying something different, something that made the ancient hunter feel an emotion he had not experienced in centuries: uncertainty. They hunted every species they found. Then Earth hunted them back. The year of preparation ended with fire falling from the sky. General Chris Thompson watched from his underground command center as Void Hunter ships descended toward Earth's major cities, their biomechanical hulls glowing with deadly purpose. The Great Hunt had officially begun, and High Predator Zethkalar expected humanity to run and hide like every other species before them. He was about to learn how wrong he could be. The first Void Hunter hunting parties landed in what used to be London, expecting to find terrified humans cowering in buildings. Instead, they found empty streets and an eerie silence that made even their advanced sensors nervous. Sergeant Amy Foster watched from her hidden position as the aliens spread out through the abandoned city, their movements confident and predatory. The Void Hunters had studied human military tactics for decades, but they had focused on large-scale warfare between nations. They understood tanks and fighter jets and missile strikes. What they did not understand was what happened when you cornered a species that had spent millions of years as persistence hunters. Amy triggered the first trap when the alien patrol reached Trafalgar Square. The explosion was not meant to kill them, just to separate the group and create confusion. As the Void Hunters stumbled through the smoke and debris, hidden human fighters struck from every direction. Not with advanced weapons, but with simple tools used in ways the aliens had never encountered. "Remember, we're not trying to win stand-up fights," Amy whispered into her radio as her team melted back into the ruins. "We're trying to learn. Every time they react to something, we figure out a little more about how they think." In New York, Lieutenant Alex Cruz was putting together the most elaborate trap in human history. The Void Hunters had claimed the Empire State Building as their hunting lodge, using it as a base to launch raids into the surrounding area. They expected humans to either avoid the area or make desperate frontal attacks on their position. Alex gave them something completely different. Over 3 weeks, his teams carefully planted explosives throughout the building's support structure. Not enough to bring it down quickly, but enough to create a controlled collapse that would take exactly 14 minutes. During those 14 minutes, the building would become a maze of falling debris and shifting floors. The Void Hunters inside would have 2 choices. Use their advanced technology to escape immediately, revealing capabilities they had kept hidden, or stay and fight in an environment where their advantages meant nothing. Either way, humanity would learn something valuable. Initiate Building 7, Alex spoke into his communicator, using the code name they had assigned to the operation. Dr. Marcus Bell worked frantically in an underground laboratory beneath the ruins of Chicago, surrounded by pieces of captured Void Hunter technology. Every skirmish between human forces and alien hunters had been designed not just to survive, but to gather intelligence. Damaged alien weapons, fragments of their armor, even their discarded waste materials had been collected and studied. Their technology is biological, Marcus explained to the other scientists working around him. Not just biomechanical like we thought, but actually alive. These weapons grow and adapt based on how they're used, but that means they have vulnerabilities that purely mechanical systems don't have. He held up a small device that pulsed with the same bioluminescent patterns as Void Hunter ships. I extracted this neural control node from a damaged alien rifle. If we can figure out how to disrupt the neural pathways, we might be able to turn their own weapons against them. Captain Nicole Stevens coordinated resistance activities from a mobile command center that moved through the subway tunnels beneath major cities. Her job was to make sure that every human fighter around the world learned from every encounter, no matter how small. When Amy Foster discovered that Void Hunters were vulnerable to certain sound frequencies, Nicole made sure that information reached every resistance cell within hours. The aliens think like pack hunters, Nicole reported during a global coordination meeting. They're used to prey that either fights in organized groups or scatters in panic. We're doing neither. We're fighting like a distributed intelligence, and it's confusing them. The Void Hunters were indeed confused. High Predator Zethkalar stood in his command ship, staring at tactical displays that made no sense. Previous prey species had followed predictable patterns. Governments would either surrender immediately or organize large military responses that could be easily overwhelmed. Civilian populations would flee to remote areas or huddle in defensive positions. Humans were doing something unprecedented. They were treating the Great Hunt like a learning exercise. Every engagement was clearly designed to gather intelligence rather than achieve tactical victories. Small teams would attack isolated Void Hunter patrols not to destroy them, but to test specific weapons or tactics. When the attacks failed, the humans would disappear and try something completely different the next time. They're studying us, Seth Keller admitted to his second-in-command. In 847 previous hunts, no prey species has ever treated the Great Hunt as an opportunity to research their hunters. This is unprecedented. In the Australian outback, Corporal Danny Wright was proving that human creativity could overcome almost any technological advantage. His territory was a vast stretch of desert that the Void Hunters considered perfect hunting ground. Open terrain with nowhere to hide, clear sight lines for their advanced sensors, and plenty of room for their flying vehicles to maneuver. Danny turned every one of those advantages against them. He used the clear sight lines to spot alien patrols from miles away, giving him time to prepare ambushes. The open terrain that made humans visible also made it impossible for the Void Hunters to approach without being seen, and the flying vehicles that gave them such mobility also made them vulnerable to carefully placed electromagnetic pulse devices that Marcus Bell's team had developed. The trick is not to fight them where they're strong, Danny explained to his team as they prepared another trap. It's to fight them where we're strong. They're apex predators from space, but we're apex predators from Earth. This is our planet, and we know every rock and tree and shadow. The psychological impact on the Void Hunters was becoming noticeable. Hunting parties that had started the campaign with arrogant confidence were now moving cautiously through human territories. Their reports back to the command ship spoke of an enemy that seemed to anticipate their movements and counter their tactics faster than should be possible. Some younger Void Hunters began expressing doubt about the hunt's outcome. These doubts reached the clan elders, who responded by sending reinforcements and authorizing the use of more advanced hunting technologies. The Great Hunt was escalating beyond its original parameters, and Zethkalar found himself making decisions that violated centuries of hunting tradition. Amy Foster crouched in the ruins of Westminster Abbey, watching as Void Hunter reinforcements landed in the distance. Her radio crackled with reports from resistance cells around the world. The aliens were bringing in their best hunters, their most advanced equipment, their deadliest tactics. She smiled grimly and began preparing her next trap. The Void Hunters thought they were escalating the hunt, But what they were really doing was giving humanity access to even better technology to study and reverse engineer. Every new weapon they deployed was another opportunity for Dr. Bell's teams to unlock their secrets. The species that had once hunted mammoth with stone spears was now hunting interdimensional aliens with improvised technology and pure stubborn determination. The great hunt was turning into something no void hunter had ever experienced before. It was turning into a fair fight. They hunted every species they found, then Earth hunted them back 8 months into the great hunt. Commander Luke Taylor stood on the bridge of the improvised warship Revenge and watched the Void Hunter mothership growing larger on his screens. Every piece of technology on his ship had been stolen, captured, or reverse engineered from alien equipment. Dr. Marcus Bell's electromagnetic weapons hummed with power in the ship's modified weapon bays, ready to test whether human ingenuity could overcome alien superiority. "All stations report ready," announced his weapons officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim. "The electromagnetic pulse generators are charged and targeted at their neural control networks." Luke had volunteered for this mission knowing it was probably suicide. No human ship had ever successfully attacked a Void Hunter mothership. But 8 months of guerrilla warfare had taught humanity that the aliens were not invincible. They could be hurt, they could be confused, and most importantly, they could be surprised. "Fire everything," Luke ordered. The Revenge unleashed every weapon in its arsenal at once. Electromagnetic pulses designed to disrupt biological systems. Modified nuclear warheads wrapped in alien metal to pierce their hulls. Even simple kinetic projectiles fired at relativistic speeds. For 30 seconds, space around the Void Hunter mothership became a storm of human fury. When the energy discharges cleared, the alien ship was still there, but something was wrong with it. The bioluminescent patterns that covered its hull were flickering irregularly. Pieces of its biomechanical armor were falling away into space, and most importantly, it was not firing back. "Direct hit on their neural control center," Sarah reported with excitement. "Their ship is alive, and we just gave it a concussion." Luke watched in amazement as the massive Void Hunter vessel began drifting helplessly through space. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as internal systems failed. For the first time in their species' history, the Void Hunters had lost a major ship to their prey. The victory sent shockwaves through both human and alien forces. Captain Rachel Moore intercepted frantic communications between Void Hunter ships as their perfect confidence began to crack. "They're calling us unnatural," she reported to Admiral Hudson. "Some of their hunters are demanding permission to withdraw from Earth. They say humans violate the natural order of predator and prey." But High Predator Zeth Galar refused to admit defeat. Instead of recognizing that humanity might be more dangerous than expected, he chose to escalate the conflict. Emergency communications went out to every Void Hunter clan in their dimension, calling for reinforcements and authorization to use their most destructive hunting tools. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked frantically to decode the intercepted alien communications. What she discovered made her blood freeze. "They're not just calling for more hunters," she told the emergency council meeting. "They're calling for their entire armada. Every ship, every weapon, every hunter they have." Admiral Hudson studied the intelligence reports spread across her table. "How many ships are we talking about?" "Based on the communication patterns, possibly thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. They're treating Earth like the ultimate test of their hunting skills." Marcus Bell looked up from his research notes. "There's something else. I've been analyzing the neural control systems we captured from their damaged ships. The Void Hunters don't just use biological technology. They use a hive mind network that connects all their ships and weapons. Every hunter shares information instantly with every other hunter. That's how they coordinate so perfectly," Rachel realized. "But it also means they have a single point of failure." "Exactly," Marcus said. "If we could introduce a virus into their shared consciousness, it would spread through their entire fleet. Not a biological virus, but a digital one, something that disrupts their neural pathways and turns their own technology against them." The plan that emerged from their discussions was audacious beyond belief. Instead of trying to fight the incoming Void Hunter armada ship by ship, humanity would attempt to hack their collective consciousness and turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. But delivering the virus would require someone to get close enough to the Void Hunter command ship to upload it directly into their network. It would be a suicide mission against an enemy that had never been defeated. Lieutenant Ashley Murphy stepped forward before anyone else could volunteer. "I'll do it," she said simply. "My brother died in the first wave of attacks. My sister was killed in the London ambush. I've got nothing left to lose, and I'm the best pilot we have." Admiral Hudson looked at the young woman and saw the same determination that had carried humanity through 8 months of impossible odds. "Ashley, you understand this is a one-way mission. Even if the virus works, you won't be coming back." "I understand," Ashley replied. "But if this works, no other species will have to go through what we've been through. That's worth dying for." The next 2 weeks were spent preparing for the most desperate gambit in human history. Marcus Bell worked around the clock to refine the digital virus, making it as adaptable and aggressive as possible. Engineers stripped down Ashley's fighter craft to make room for additional computer systems and the most powerful transmitter they could build. Meanwhile, Void Hunter reinforcements began arriving in massive numbers. The skies over Earth darkened with alien ships as hunters from across their dimension gathered for what they expected to be the final phase of the Great Hunt. High Predator Zethkalar announced that humanity's resistance had made them worthy of the ultimate honor, total extermination by the combined might of the Void Hunter clans. "This is unprecedented," Zethkalar broadcast to his assembled fleet. "Never before has a prey species lasted this long or caused this much difficulty. They have earned the right to face our full strength before they die." Ashley Murphy sat in her fighter's cockpit, running through final systems checks as the Void Hunter fleet assembled overhead. Her small ship looked pathetic compared to the massive alien vessels, but it carried humanity's last hope in its computer systems. "Remember," Marcus Bell's voice crackled over her radio, "you need to get within 1,000 meters of their command ship and maintain that distance for at least 30 seconds. The virus needs time to propagate through their network." "I'll get you your 30 seconds, Ashley promised. She launched her fighter into space, accelerating toward the heart of the Void Hunter fleet. Alien ships immediately moved to intercept her, but they were expecting another guerrilla raid, not a desperate infiltration mission. Ashley used every trick she had learned in 8 months of fighting, weaving between energy blasts and using the aliens' own ships as cover. Her fighter shook under incoming fire as she pushed closer to the command vessel. Warning lights flashed across her control panels as alien weapons tore through her ship's armor, but she kept flying, kept pushing forward, kept believing that 30 seconds could change everything. "Uploading now," she transmitted, as her fighter closed the final distance to the alien command ship. Energy beams lanced through space around her as the virus began its work, spreading through the Void Hunter network like wildfire through dry grass. Ashley's ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, but the virus was already spreading through the alien fleet. One by one, Void Hunter ships began experiencing system failures as their own technology turned against them. The perfect coordination that had made them invincible started to crumble as the virus corrupted their shared consciousness. High Predator Zethkalar watched in horror as his fleet descended into chaos. Finally understanding that humanity was not prey at all, they were predators who had been temporarily sleeping and now they were fully awake. They hunted. Every species they found, then Earth hunted them back. The virus spread through the Void Hunter fleet like poison through veins, and Admiral Kate Hudson watched from the bridge of the Defiance as the most feared predators in the galaxy began destroying themselves. Ships that had coordinated perfectly for thousands of years suddenly opened fire on their own allies. Biomechanical weapons turned against their wielders as the digital infection corrupted every neural pathway in their network. But High Predator Zethkalar was not finished. As his fleet descended into chaos around him, he activated the Final Hunt Protocol, a weapon so terrible that Void Hunters had only used it twice in their entire history. The protocol would sterilize Earth's entire surface, turning the planet into a lifeless rock that would serve as a monument to the aliens' ultimate victory. "All ships, prepare for Operation Reversal," Kate ordered over the fleet communication system. She had been planning this moment since Ashley Murphy's sacrifice began working its way through the alien network. The Void Hunters thought they were ending the hunt by destroying Earth. But humanity had a different plan entirely. Commander Jake Morrison led the interdimensional assault force that emerged from hyperspace just as the sterilization weapon began charging. His ships had been modified with captured Void Hunter technology, allowing them to travel between dimensions and strike at the aliens' home territories. While Zethkalar focused on destroying Earth, Humanity would attack the heart of Void Hunter civilization. Multiple targets confirmed, reported Chief Engineer Gary Peterson from the navigation station. We're detecting massive installations throughout this system. Jake, these look like museums or storage facilities. Jake's blood turned cold as he realized what they had found. The Void Hunters were not just killers, they were collectors. Every species they had exterminated over thousands of years was represented here by vast museums filled with artifacts, genetic samples, and cultural treasures. The aliens had been preserving pieces of their victims like hunting trophies. Jennifer, take your squadron and hit those storage facilities, Jake ordered Captain Jennifer Murphy, Ashley's older sister who had volunteered for the interdimensional mission. If there are genetic samples in there, we might be able to restore some of the extinct species. Jennifer's ships dove toward the museum complexes with fury that went beyond military duty. These were personal attacks against the beings that had murdered her sister and threatened to do the same to humanity. Her weapons tore through alien defenses that had never been tested against attack, destroying millennia of carefully preserved genocide. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Chris Thompson coordinated the final defense against the sterilization weapon. The virus had crippled most of the Void Hunter fleet, but Zeth Kalar's command ship was heavily shielded and still functional. The planetary bombardment system was charging, and Earth had perhaps an hour before every living thing on the surface was incinerated. Major Steve Collins led the desperate assault on the alien command vessel. His teams had been modified with captured Void Hunter biotechnology, giving them abilities that would have seemed like magic months earlier. Enhanced strength, improved reflexes, and most importantly, the ability to interface directly with alien computer systems. The virus is still spreading through their network, Dr. Elena Rodriguez reported from her position aboard Collins's assault ship. But the command ship has isolated itself from the main network to prevent infection. We'll have to upload the virus directly into their core systems. Steve's teams fought their way through the biomechanical corridors of the alien ship, engaging Void Hunter defenders in close combat for the first time. The aliens were larger and stronger than humans, but they had spent so long hunting helpless prey that they had forgotten how to fight enemies that could actually hurt them. Sergeant Amy Foster, now enhanced with alien biotechnology, moved through the ship like a force of nature. Every trick she had learned in months of guerrilla warfare was amplified by her new capabilities. She could predict alien movements, interface with their technology, and strike with precision that left their defenders bewildered. Command center located, Amy reported as her team reached the heart of the ship, beginning virus upload now. The upload process took exactly 93 seconds, but those seconds felt like hours as Void Hunter reinforcements poured into the command center. Steve Collins and his enhanced soldiers held them off with weapons that combined human ingenuity with alien technology, creating combinations that neither species had ever imagined. When the virus finally penetrated the command ship's core systems, the effect was immediate and devastating. High Predator Zeth Kalar watched in horror as his own ship turned against him, its biomechanical systems rejecting his neural commands and beginning to tear themselves apart from within. This is impossible. Zeth Kalar transmitted on all frequencies as his mighty fleet crumbled around him. We are the apex predators of the galaxy. We have hunted successfully for thousands of years. How can mere prey defeat us? Admiral Hudson's response was broadcast to every surviving Void Hunter ship in the system. Because we were never prey. We were apex predators who had temporarily forgotten how to hunt. You reminded us what we really are. The battle ended not with a single decisive moment, but with the slow collapse of Void Hunter resistance throughout both dimensions. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia surrendered or fled as their crews realized that their age of dominance was over. Some aliens chose to fight to the death rather than face the humiliation of defeat, but most simply abandoned their vessels and disappeared into the depths of space. Jake Morrison stood in the ruins of a Void Hunter museum, surrounded by genetic samples and cultural artifacts from hundreds of extinct civilizations. Elena, how many species can we potentially restore? Dr. Rodriguez ran her scanner over the preserved samples, her eyes widening as she processed the results. Hundreds, maybe thousands. They kept everything. Every species they ever hunted is represented here. We could bring back entire civilizations. The war crimes tribunals would come later. The process of restoring extinct species would take decades. The establishment of humanity as the galaxy's new protectors would require centuries of careful diplomacy and exploration. But in this moment, surrounded by the evidence of countless genocides, the survivors of Earth knew they had accomplished something unprecedented. Captain Nicole Stevens coordinated the final cleanup operations as human ships spread throughout Void Hunter space, liberating prison colonies and destroying weapon stockpiles. Everywhere they went, they found evidence of the aliens' systematic cruelty and the remains of civilizations that had been hunted to extinction. Broadcast this message on all frequencies, Admiral Hudson ordered as she surveyed the captured Void Hunter command ship. The age of the Great Hunt is over. Any remaining Void Hunter clans that continue to hunt sentient species will be tracked down and stopped. The galaxy now has new protectors, and we do not hunt for sport. The species that had once cowered in underground bunkers while aliens played deadly games on the surface above now patrolled the stars in ships that combined human determination with captured alien technology. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity had claimed its place not as prey, but as the galaxy's new apex predators. High Predator Zeth Kalar, now a prisoner aboard his own ship, stared at his human captors with something approaching respect. "You fought well for prey animals," he admitted. Steve Collins looked at the defeated alien and smiled. "We fought exactly like what we are, the descendants of creatures that hunted mammoth with stone spears. You just gave us better spears." Earth had survived the Great Hunt, and the galaxy would never be the same.